Mikey Garcia defeats Adrien Broner on points over 12 rounds. Two of the judges score at 8 rounds to 4 for Mikey Garcia. I think one of them had it 9 rounds to 3 or something of that nature, which kind of gives the impression of a competitive but clear fight. And I guess to an extent that's what it was. For me, Mikey Garcia, a very, very clear winner, no doubt about that. I actually thought 8 rounds to 4 was potentially even generous to Adrien Broner. What I would say is a lot of the rounds were pick-em rounds. A lot of them were quite close, competitive rounds. There were certain rounds that maybe didn't catch fire completely, and I guess that's why the judges' scorecards were perhaps a little bit closer than some of the people watching the fight at home and that sort of thing. Broner fought an odd fight here. I wasn't completely convinced that Broner was necessarily in this fight to win the fight for the majority of it. I don't know if it was that he sensed early on that Mikey Garcia had the beating of him. I don't know if he felt Garcia's power and went into a defensive mode from that moment onwards. But I kind of had the picture in this fight that Adrien Broner was happy to take a defeat. And even though in the last 2 or 3 rounds he was trying to come into the fight, he wasn't fully committing. He wasn't thinking, right, I've got 2 or 3 rounds left here. Let me throw power punches and go out on my seal. Let me throw caution to the wind in order to get a knockout victory. And maybe because he's got 2 losses on his career, going up against a guy like Mikey Garcia and being down on the scorecards, maybe Broner was content to try and get to the end of the fight and continue the fact that he's never been stopped in a professional contest. Maybe that was something that he was keen to preserve, and having felt Garcia's power early on in the fight, he didn't really throw caution to the wind. But Broner is a frustrating fighter to watch, and there's several of them in boxing at the minute. There's several boxers who I watch, who I'm fans of, who I think, what a waste of talent. And these are boxers who've gone on and achieved great things in boxing. I mean, Adrien Broner, you can question the validity of some of the titles he's held, but he's a 4-weight world champion. You've got a guy like Tyson Fury, who, obviously won the heavyweight title against Vladimir Klitschko, as you guys know. There's other fighters out there as well. And you just kind of wonder, Billy Joe Saunders in the UK, who's been so inactive and lost all momentum. There seems to be a lot of fighters right now who are verging on being wasted talents. And some of the stuff that Adrien Broner was doing in there last night, even though he wasn't winning the fight, even though he wasn't even looking particularly good, just some of the stuff he was doing, some of the defence, some of the ring positioning, you could see that he truly has elite elements to his game, but that for whatever reason he's not the complete package. And a large reason for that has to go in Mikey Garcia's favour, because Mikey Garcia, as ever, was very, very good last night. I think if you watch Garcia, and I think I've maybe I've been guilty of this in the past, being honest, he's not an overly flashy fighter, Mikey Garcia. You look at a guy like a Roy Jones Jr. and you talk about the athleticism. You look at a guy like Deontay Wilder, you talk about the one-punch power. You look at a guy like Floyd Mayweather, you talk about the shoulder roll defence. You look at Mikey Garcia, he's not maybe got a complete one standout element of his game. He makes it look very easy, and he does the basics incredibly well. His judgment of range, his movement, his jabbing, just his all-round technique is sublime. It's it's real 10 out of 10 stuff without looking ridiculously flashy, ridiculously over the top. And I think sometimes because he makes it look so easy in there, and because he is a fighter who is a basics first fighter in terms of his approach, it's sometimes possible to watch his fights without them being overly memorable. And I think, in my opinion, unfortunately, that was the case last night against the Adrien Broner fight. It was an interesting fight. It's a fight that I did enjoy. Realistically, in 3 or 4 months' time, we will be talking about that as a fight to look back on. When we review 2017, will we be talking about that as a fight with great moments, or a fight that kept us on the edge of our seats? Probably not, compared to what some of the other boxing out there is. But But what Mikey Garcia did do is he stepped into the ring at a weight class that I personally believe was a higher weight class than he needs to be operating against. He went in against a very experienced 4 times world champion, and with his basics first approach, with his technique, he really coasted through this fight with consummate ease and professionalism. As I say, I think 8 rounds to 4, potentially charitable towards Adrien Broner. And Garcia, did so with the minimal of fuss and really was able to take Adrien Broner's game away from him and put Adrien Broner in a bit of a defensive construct as far as I'm concerned. He made Adrien Broner become low volume for spells of the fight, and he was able to take rounds away from Adrien Broner when the first couple of minutes had been tight and difficult to score. So Mikey Garcia deserves a huge amount of credit. I've never been completely sold on Garcia. I've never been one of the Garcia disciples, if you like. And I guess 2 or 3 fights ago, I was one of those who thought that a flashier fighter like Jorge Linares at 135 or a Terence Crawford at 140 would potentially have too much versatility to their game for a guy like Mikey Garcia. But, he's a fighter who has improved, he's a fighter who has impressed, and he's a fighter who really has confirmed the class he showed early on in his career with his 2 recent performances, stopping Dazens Latikanen for a world title at 135 and then going up to 140 and dominating Adrien Broner. At this stage, it's hard to see anyone at 135 beating Mikey Garcia. Of course, we'd love to see him fight Jorge Linares. Whether or not that fight happens, I don't know, but even I would have to say, and I'm a huge Linares advocate, long-time viewers will know, but even I would have to say that Mikey Garcia would now start that fight, in my mind, let alone the bookie's mind, as a substantial favourite. I think the fight that I view as a fight where Garcia is still probably the underdog is the Terence Crawford fight, because Crawford, for me, genuinely has the ability to be considered the best in the sport, potentially. I think there's a few names who people talk about as the best fighter in the sport. I think it's Andre Ward, it's Terence Crawford, some say Lomachenko. I guess a few years ago you'd have said Mayweather, you'd have said Manny Pacquiao, and I think Crawford deserves to be in that mix for the skills and all-round nature of the game he brings to the table. I actually don't think Mikey Garcia is too far away from that level. I think Crawford may enjoy a fairly substantial size advantage over Mikey Garcia, which surprisingly Adrien Broner didn't enjoy last night. And I think Crawford Garcia is a highly competitive matchup that genuinely could go either way, but it's a matchup I'd probably favour Crawford on. And in terms of why I'd favour Crawford, a lot of it does come down to instinct, and a lot of it probably does come down to me being suckered into the fact that Crawford's got all the slickness and Crawford's got all the tricks in the book, etc. If Garcia can implement his fundamentals against Terence Crawford like he did against Adrien Broner last night, who knows? Perhaps he can get the victory there as well. But that's a fight that hardcore boxing fans will be drooling over, and it's a fight that will, I'm sure, generate a substantial amount of interest if it were to be made. As for Garcia's next moves, I don't know about weight class and that sort of thing. He appears to be an exceptionally hard puncher, and you kind of assume if he's fighting at 135, his power there is going to be a far bigger factor in fights than fighting the big guys at 140 or 147 potentially. But a huge amount of credit goes to Mikey Garcia. He's someone who I think deserves to be in the realm of the pound for pound conversation after his 2 recent fights. I'm not saying that a win over Dazens Latikanen or a win over Adrien Broner in itself makes you eligible to be in the top 10, but it's the manner with which he's taken these guys out, it's the consistency, it's the building on the promise that he's shown earlier on in his career where he was a world champion, let's not forget. Mikey Garcia, a very, very impressive fighter to watch, a good guy to watch for anyone starting out in boxing, a good guy to model yourself on, and I really look forward to seeing where he goes from here. I hope the momentum doesn't stop. He's got 2 massive wins back to back, and I'd like to see him in against someone who is on the same level as a Zlatan or an Adrien Broner, if not even higher. Let me know your thoughts, people. Did you enjoy the fight? Where next for Broner? Where next for Mikey Garcia? What did you make of the scoring? And who would you pick in that sort of Crawford versus Mikey Garcia matchup? Tantalising stuff. Let me know your thoughts, guys. Comments in the section below, as ever. If you're new, please subscribe and hit the thumbs up button. Many thanks as always for tuning in.